And with that, I will go ahead and start with a roll call.
Mayor Seaman,
Here.
Councilmember Castellano,
Here.
Councilmember Moulton is absent, Councilmember Arroyo,
Here.
Councilmember Bauer,
Here.
Councilmember Burgell.
Here.
All right. Will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So we are going to move on to the mayor's announcements, and I am going to ask Councilmember for the Boys and Girls Club Week.
Thank you. Would you like to come forward, Kiana? In recognition of National Boys and Girls Club Week, June 27th through July 1st, 2022, whereas the young people of Eureka, California are tomorrow's leaders, and whereas many young people need professional youth services to help them achieve their full potential, and whereas there are 3 Boys and Girls Club organizations in Humboldt County that serve more than 4,000 young people annually, and whereas Boys and Girls Clubs instill young people with the self-confidence to believe they can succeed at anything they put their mind to, and stand at the forefront of efforts in the areas of key programs, academic success, healthy lifestyles, good character, and citizenship. And whereas Boys and Girls Club organizations in California help ensure young people have a safe, supportive place to spend time and will provide them with quality youth development programs. And whereas the Boys and Girls Club of the Redwoods will celebrate National Boys and Girls Club Week with some 4,000 clubs and over 2 million more children and teens nationwide. Now, therefore, I, Kim Burgell, on behalf of the Mayor and the Eureka City Council, do hereby proclaim June 27th through July 1st, 2022 as Boys and Girls Club Week in Eureka. And furthermore, I encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing and commending Boys and Girls Clubs for providing the young people of our communities with comprehensive and effective youth development services.
And please say a few words if you'd like.
Okay. Celebrated since 1941, National Boys and Girls Club recognizes the invaluable service clubs bring to communities, paving the road for great futures that are within reach of every young person who enters our doors. Join in on the fun by celebrating National Boys and Girls Club Week by observing, participating in daily themed activities, I should say. So we are, as she stated, we're celebrating National Boys and Girls Club Week starting next Monday. And we do have themes every day that BGCA puts out. Starting Monday, we kick off the week. Our doors are open to the community, which usually they're not. So on that day, Monday, you could come in and just take a tour of our clubs. And we also have our club themes, and that day is Crazy Hairstyle Day. Tuesday is Spirit Day. Wednesday is Wellness Day. Thursday is Career Day. And Friday is we celebrate our staff, which we call Youth Development Professionals. And on Saturday, the 2nd, is our celebration of the week, where we have bounce houses, face painting. Humboldt Bay Fire will come out with a truck. Eureka City Police will come out with hopefully with their K9 or their fingerprint table. We have food, a dunk tank for staff, tie-dye station, music, and much more. So, and it's free to the community, so please spread the word. And if you can come out and check us out, please do so.
Excellent. Thank
We
you
appreciate
so
all you
much.
do.
Before we move on to our presentations, Actually, we'll just move right on to our presentations. So,
Mayor,
yes. Oh,
pardon
do
me.
we have any report outs from our closed session?
None to report out today, just for the record. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Why do I always miss it? I'm so sorry. So now I'm going to invite North Coast Health Improvement and Information Network, INCHIN, for a presentation. Jessica Osborne.
Is it okay if I adjust it a little bit to the side? Well, thank you. Let's see, I think we have a slide deck that's accompanying it. Perfect. There it is. Magic. Well, let me just start off by thanking you, Mayor Seaman, and the Eureka City Council. Oh, perfect. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you all this evening. My name is Jessica Osborne Staffsness. I'm the project director for North Coast Care Connect at the North Coast Health Improvement and Information Network here in Eureka. We don't have a lot of time here together this evening, so what I'd like to do is just give you a little background on our organization, give you a little background on an initiative, and then reflect for you where we are in practice. And I'm not sure it's advancing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh. Ah.
Okay. Okay, great. I'll just say next slide. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here's a bit of background on our organization. The North Coast Health Improvement and Information Network is the backbone to North Coast Care Connect. We're a 501c3 that was established in 2010 with a focus on health information exchange. We currently have endpoints around most medical entities here in the community. In 2015 or so, we built on that experience of health information exchange, the value of sending healthcare information to other healthcare partners, and started to work on cross-sector information exchange, which meant that we were able to do things like send caseworkers information when their clients were in the emergency room so that they could do quick and rapid follow-up care, stabilizing community care, and sort of the converse effort around that, which would be things like sending the emergency department information when a client has a caseworker so that you could have also in 2015, we expanded our scope of work and added an I to the name, so improvement, to focus on community health improvement activities. And we've been running a series of collective impact efforts in our community since then, most notably the Humboldt Community Health Trust, which is something called an accountable community for health. And basically, that's sort of a fancy term for saying that there's really, really tough issues to tackle in our community from a systems level, and no one organization and sector can take on those issues alone, so we try and take those on together. Next slide. So we're going to be talking about the CIE, which is the last arrow you can see there, the Community Information Exchange. But I just wanted to give you a sense of sort of the formative work that led up to developing a Community Information Exchange. I would say that our early efforts doing health information exchange in the community were certainly formative. They But it was really the community work, the community health improvement work, that created the imperative for doing a community information exchange. Next slide. So what is a CIE? What is this community information exchange that we speak of? So at a high level, it's a network of multidisciplinary partners that are working together using a shared technology system, a database, a mechanism for sharing information that helps transform how a community delivers holistic, person-centered, and proactive care. Sometimes when community information exchanges get talked about, they get conflated with just that technical component of the work, so the technology system that allows you to do things like referrals and shared assessments and reporting. But we take a much broader view of this in our community. We really feel that the ongoing role of community partnerships and involvement is truly actually intervention that allows us to transform how we're serving clients in our community. And then I would say from the client perspective, perhaps a community information exchange feels a little bit like this. John Doe, pictured on the screen, doesn't have to go through the trauma of telling his social, medical, behavioral health history to every client organization he encounters to try and get care. It also means that he has assurance that he's not going to fall through the gaps. That's a term we hear a lot in terms of record of where his referrals have been made, and he can actually receive a copy of what referrals have been made on his behalf. And it also means that he gets services more efficiently because all the individual organizations that he's working with are working together to try and provide him holistic care and deliver services in a really effective and efficient manner. Next slide. So why adopt a community information exchange? Our work through the Humboldt Community Health Trust that collected landed us in a lot of rooms over the course of the last 6 years. Sometimes we were talking about ACEs, sometimes we were talking about housing, sometimes we were talking about substance use disorder, sometimes we were talking about behavioral health. But in all those rooms, these themes kept emerging. So different topics, but similar themes. And we were hearing things from our partners like, how can we provide better client care? How do we navigate clients to services that we know that exist, but it's hard to sort of stay in touch? How do we know who else is working with clients in the community? And so you can sort of see an example of some of those questions on the screen. So that was the service provider perspective, and the themes were really strong and recurrent. But what you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen is actually a mapping that we did really early on in our work. It's impossible to read. I'm sorry for that. But what this is actually how a single employed adult male without co-occurring conditions might get into substance use disorder treatment in Humboldt County. And you can see all the ways in which that might be bifurcated or considerations that have to be made just to get into care. Next slide. So essentially, our partners, decided there had to be a better way. There had to be a better way to support us in working together. There had to be a better way in getting clients connected to services. So in 2019, the Humboldt Community Health Trust chartered a team, local partner organizations to attend the National Summit for Community Information Exchange, as well as a discovery work group to sort of learn collectively, what is this model together? How might we use this in our community? In 2020, we named this as a core strategy of our work. So what can we do to accelerate this and get it moving? We also raised 3 years worth of development funding, and I'm sort of particularly proud and appreciative of this. 95% of the contributions for the 3-year budget has come from local organizations. So really a sort of deep commitment to seeing this work go forward. In 2021, we spent a good portion of our time in community design work, and I'll actually talk about that. And we also gave a name to the Community Information Exchange locally, so that's North Coast Care Connect. And they do get used a little interchangeably, so sorry for that. North Coast Care Connect is the Community Information Exchange. And then 2022, the platform is actually live. We're in sort of a beta testing process right now with onboarding is the theme of our summer. We are in many, many different conversations working to get organizations and programs onto the system and doing program outreach, just like we're doing tonight. Next slide. So I just want to circle back to the theme that sort of a good technical system is important, but good community participation is essential. And this is something that we have really centered our work in from the get-go. We think that that is important to improve systemness, to improve equity, and to cultivate trust among partners. So this is some of the example of the community designed work we've done. We've done a bunch of key informant interviews across multiple programs with multiple individuals. In 2021, we spent 10 weeks through the middle of the summer with 30 very committed individuals in a co-design process. So I think that's a good indication of commitment that you can get your colleagues to commit to 90-minute Zoom meetings week after week after week to try and get work done. And it was incredible. And moving forward, we have several ongoing work groups. So one is the steering committee you can see on the screen. It's composed of people that are funders, partners, future partners of the network, and general champions, as well as community residents. This group meets monthly to continue to steer and guide the work. We also have an ongoing operations work group for folks that are using the system about optimizing the platform. Next slide. So just wanted to give you a sense of who our steering committee members are. We are particularly pleased by sort of the diversity of stakeholders and representatives. Really, we tried to have a range of organizational focus areas, partners, so that the needs of large organizations didn't usurp the needs of small organizations. And we actually have several community residents that have been involved in the work, and their voice has just been critical to shaping how this work moves forward. As we add partners to the network, they're invited to participate either in the steering or the operating. Okay, so here is an example of what a client record looks like in North Coast Care Connect. And what I'm showing you is a screenshot of a client record. This is an example from our training site. This is a fictional person with no PHI here. And I'll also say that it's kind of difficult to explain the platform without a live demonstration. So I'm just sort of going to give you a high-level overview with the static site and make an offer that if folks want to see a detailed demonstration, interactive demonstration at a later date, we'd be happy to do that. So a couple things to mention right off the bat. This is a consent-based system. Clients have to consent to participate, and it's HIPAA compliant. If we're looking at the system here, you can see that it does a couple different things. The system maintains client demographic information. It also can maintain a document vault, which means that you can upload information pertaining to the client, and it stays with their record of care. Pretty important for folks that might have an unstable housing situation. You want records tied to them. It also allows for case activity, so it does things where you can track case tasks or make case notes. And then there's a fairly robust referral component. So you can look at a resource directory of services in the community, refer to those endpoints, and know that the referral has been received. Under the number 1, you're seeing a circle there, and that's something called OneView. And that's a sort of high-level look of needs that the client might be facing across 3 domains: behavioral health, medical, or social care domains. And the further the spoke out, the more significant the need is. So this isn't a way for folks that are on Ryan's care team to understand. In the center, you can see Ryan's services timeline, and there's a sort of myriad of boxes there. Boxes that are opaque are referrals that have been made that have been received by the receiving agency, and boxes that are open are referrals that are made but have not been yet accepted. And then to the furthest right of the slide, under number 3, is a picture of who's on Ryan's care team. And so we can see here that he has representation from a clinic on his care team, from CalFresh, someone that's helping him get enrolled in CalFresh, and as well as a case manager from a family resource center. So it's sort of a composition of folks that might be working with Ryan on the needs indicated in his OneView. So there's a variety of things that the platform does that's sort of hard to just describe from one slide. So again, I would just say we have had the opportunity to do some interactive demonstrations with a few of the City of Eureka programs. We're happy to make that available to any staff that wants to see that or council member moving forward. Next slide. So where we're at now, we are working really hard to create broader awareness of North Coast Care Connect. We have a really powerful set of champions, folks that have been involved in this work from the beginning, our steering committee, folks that are bringing this work to their partners so that we can continue to spread the word. And that's been really important for us in spreading and scaling the work. We're working on broader adoption of North Coast Care Connect. We're currently talking to over 29 programs and organizations about bringing them onto the system. And scale is important here. The most folks on, the more beneficial it is. We're seeking additional thought partners. We've been really fortunate to talk to the Uplift program, CSET, and early conversations and understanding how this could work for City of Eureka programs. And we would invite that in. That's been sort of the critical component of this, is meeting with a variety of different programs across the county to understand how this could benefit their work. And we continue to look for sustainable funding support. We do have a fee schedule. We built it out with our steering committee. The goal is to sustain the work of the CIE, so we're not sort of continually looking for grants to sustain this effort. But as we get to sort of full scope, we might need some sustainable funding support along the way. Next slide. So in closing, I'd just like to acknowledge our many partners and funders that have helped us get to this point, and especially the North Coast Care Connect team. Martin Love, Clark Swan, Carrie Escudero, and Taffy Stockton. it's just been such a group effort to get to this point, and very appreciative of their efforts. I thank you all for your time and consideration tonight, and certainly happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Castellano.
Thanks so much for your presentation. This is really cool. My questions are a little bit, recently I was studying for a project, the California Healthy Places Index. Do you know if this is kind of tied into some of those determinants around like healthy places and healthy communities?
Yeah, one of the things, not specifically tied into that, but one of the things that I think holds a lot of promise and excitement for some of is that in time, this could be a really good source of community aggregated data, so we could understand in more detail how those relate to some of the social determinants of health that would be in the California Healthy Places Index. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. And then a little background. One of the reasons I was studying that is because there's a whole kind of cultural programming grant that specifically was looking at tying in cultural programmings to the Healthy Places Index. So, in something that's pretty active right now in the arts and culture community is just the relationship, cultural well-being and health. And I'm just curious if there might be ways of, like, I know of quite a few different programs that, serve at-risk youth or underserved youth or, folks like that. If there might be ways of, that was, I think, be sort of like another layer of care I could imagine connecting to this.
Yeah, that seems like that's a really promising opportunity. Are those programs that provide services directly to those youth, might accept a referral to those youth, or just need to do it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is about building a network and working better together in a more systemic way. So there seems to be room for all those programs in this.
Any other questions? All right. I do want to say that I invited Jessica because I understand that collaboration is both critical and complicated. I was thrilled to learn the term the groan zone the other day, which is that very difficult time when you're starting to work with so many different organizations to find some way to all move in the same direction. But like you said, as you've gone from room to room and those topics come up constantly, we all need to be moving in the same direction. We all need to be working together. We can't do silos anymore, and this is just really exciting for me. So
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Thank you
It's
all.
also complicated, so if you guys sit on it and think about it for a long time, you can always call her and ask her more details.
Yes, please feel free to do so. We welcome the conversation, my emails and the deck. And thank you all again. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next up is public comment. This is the time for members of the public who wish to be heard on speaking limit time is 3 minutes. Do we have anybody who would like to come up?
My name is Charles Wilson. I was thinking of different things I could talk about today, but the thing is, it is Juneteenth. They make a big deal about the Juneteenth. And, of course, we have all these government holidays. After a while, just like on the flag at half-mast, you get sort of weary of them all, and you wonder, well, how come they don't just leave the flags at half-mast permanently? But anyway, Juneteenth is a nice idea, the idea that we shouldn't have slavery. It's nice that they made a specific statement in the Constitution with the constitutional amendment. A lot of people died. I don't think they give credit to all the people that did die for the idea of eliminating slavery. The idea is that everybody should feel guilty, and I think that's a mistake because there's a lot of people that did a lot to get rid of slavery. The United States has been, we're a young nation. We only came into existence was it 1776? They got rid of slavery whenever it was 18, well, whatever the date is, I start forgetting. But the thing is, before that, we had Britain, you had Portugal, you had Spain, you had the French, the Danish, all traded in slaves for hundreds of years. The slaves they got from Africa. Now, the tribal chiefs were colored. They got their slaves by fighting wars and taking the people prisoners and making them slaves, and then they would sell them to these other countries who'd take them over to wherever they were going. Now, you got to remember, just like the Spanish and the Portuguese, those are the ones that are given in the I forget the words, but anyway, they're not. I'm getting. Anyway, the thing is, we're a young nation. We got rid of slavery pretty quick, and these other countries were doing it for hundreds of years, and we shouldn't feel guilty about not getting rid of it there. Thank you.
This is Genevieve Wilson. I'm a nurse for 45 years. And 15 years ago, I was asking people, whoever have flu shot and whatever, 80% doesn't want to take the flu shot, like a bad cold. And I asked so many people, they said, I got COVID, but they said it looks like a bad flu, right? So my point is we all seen through it. What in the world that we have a closed down business and all that mask and all this and the vaccine. So many people come to me and say, I take 3 shots, and I'm so sick, almost die. And people say, scientists say, right now the B4 and B5, and all the people get the COVID from the people vaccinated. So we all seen it all. But now I see cases is up, and the PCR test not even accurate. So keep on taking your tests. Somebody had to dig my nose to find out I'm sick. Take care of yourself. If you have a sick, drink some water, take your vitamin C, D, and zinc. So take care of it. And you see, we see all the things. Before the vaccine, everybody died from COVID. After the vaccine, you die from old age. Nobody admit that. If you're vaccinated, you go to the hospital, they don't even recognize you. They only write down you're not vaccinated. If I'm not vaccinated, where I get the germ from? All this time, I ask people, flu shot, all the flu every year, Asian flu, what flu are, they mutate. The pharmaceutical getting the money. So we have all the billboard come in here, vaccine culture. I say it, vaccine culture echo with gate depopulation, all right? And then I also say, don't wait, vaccinate. I say, don't wait, vaccinate, die quickly. And also vaccinate our youth. What is that? It's even not a vaccine. Vaccine prevents you to get the disease, but this one you're still getting. But they want to doctors it up. Oh, you won't get sick to go to hospital. So many people go to hospital. But my point is, just take care of your body, plenty of sleep, plenty of fluid, like everybody say. So it's not a vaccine. People call me anti-vax. I say, don't call me anti-vax. It's not a vaccine. Get your name straight, okay? It's a bad biological agent. So many people get hurt, and it hurt my feeling. And that I say, I sing the song, Que sera, sera, right? Whenever just a girl say, take your vitamin C and D, plenty of fluid and sleep, and stay away from the jab, build your immunity up, que sera, sera, whatever will be happy and with love, okay? Thank you.
Well, without further ado, I'm not going to talk tonight. I'm going to play something for you. And that was a call to the Board of Supervisors.
Unmute. You'll have 3 minutes.
I hope you can hear it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, yeah, to thank you guys so much for making Humboldt County just amazing county. Orange Cap County and Orange Cap City is just a place to be. I love it so much. It's super inclusive to my lifestyle. You know, I love this rap video that's out right now called Orange Cap City. It really kind of highlights my lifestyle and the inclusivity that happens up here, to where I can come up here and I can be who I want to be, and it's okay. And so like what I like is, like I'm a heroin addict, and I take fentanyl, and when I go, broke, I can get free needles. And when I go broke, if I can't even get the drug, I can always just wear flip-flops, and kind of blindfold myself and walk around behind the library, or in some of the walking trails around Humboldt, and especially around Eureka and Arcata. And as long as I have flip-flops or some kind of open-toe shoe on, and I'm not really watching where I'm going, I could probably just, score a fix just by kind of bumping into a needle on the ground. That is fantastic. It's an opportunity of a lifetime for me. When I start having, the feels, I gotta do something, and that's what I do. And I come here because I know that if I rob a store, or if I rob someone at gunpoint or anything like that, the cops will just let me go, and they'll just let me go and let me go and let me go, because they understand as a community that the inclusivity here, it needs to include everybody, all the animals, like the lady said, all the animals, and I'm an animal, and so I got to be included in this too. And, some people, they like to, play poker and shoot pool and high-five each other. And, sing karaoke, and that's their good time. Well, some people are like me, and their good time is, sitting alone in an alley with a spoon and a needle and, kissing the world goodbye for a good couple hours. And what's the difference? We have to accept people for who they are, and then provide them with the things that they need at the taxpayer's expense. As a governing body,
Makes sense, doesn't it? Make Eureka safe again. Thank you.
Please turn it off so we can hear the next speaker.
Hello, my name is Claudette. I want to start by apologizing for not making prayer for you all a priority in my life. The Lord has reminded me of the scripture in the Bible that compels me to seek the peace of this city in which he has caused me to dwell, and in return, I too will experience his peace. When he put you all on my heart, he had asked me what I would like to pray about for you, so I wrote it down, and now I will gladly share my prayer with you, about you. Father, it is my desire to lift up our community leaders and officials to you. I pray that they would unify and no longer lean on their own understanding, but would submit to you in all their ways, allowing your wisdom and insight to govern their decisions. I thank you for having the answer to the homeless and housing issues, the solution to the injustice regarding civil rights, and the strategy for how to best utilize the finances towards various projects here in our community. I pray they seek you for those answers, solutions, and strategies. Father, I also want to pray for the salvation of our council members and their family. May their hearts be softened to receive your truth, and that they would choose you to be the Lord and Savior of their lives. Help them to submit to you and walk in your forgiveness, peace, and righteousness. Reveal yourself to them and let them experience your glory. I thank you for your plan of redemption through the work of your Son, Jesus Christ. We are not forgotten, nor without hope. So, Lord, I ask that you draw them unto you. Give them an ear to hear and a heart of repentance. Grant them your peace and the ability to hear your voice. I know that it is only you who has given me a heart for these council members. Today, I commit to pray and stand in the gap on behalf of our community leaders and officials. Be glorified in them. Use them to lead our community into righteousness and truth. I pray in the name of Jesus. I will end with this encouraging scripture from Psalm 145, 8 and 9. The Lord is gracious and full of compassion, slow to anger and great in mercy. The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works. Hallelujah and amen. Lord bless you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is John, and what we call the book of Romans is actually a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to the church that was in Rome. And we've separated that into chapters and verses. They were not in the original text, but to make it easier to find certain areas in the scriptures. And in chapter 10 of this book of Romans, this letter to Rome, Paul records a prayer. It's a prayer over Israel, but what I like to do, I like to personalize these prayers and the promises. So I changed it up like this. Friends, my desire and prayer to God for the people of Eureka is that they be saved. For I attest to the fact that they have a zeal, but not according to knowledge. For they, not understanding God's righteousness, seek to establish their own righteousness, and have not submitted to the righteousness of God. For Christ is the end of the law for righteousness to everyone who believes. Moses spoke of the righteousness which is of the law, that those who do these things need to live by them. But the righteousness which is of faith tells us that if anyone confesses that Jesus is the Lord and believes in his heart that God has raised him from the dead, he shall be saved. For with the heart we believe unto righteousness, and
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment today?
Hello, my name is Ashley Teeter, the Humboldt Freedom Coalition, HumboldtFC.com. My wife lost her job to the city of Eureka's discriminatory jab for job mandate last year. I think this might be a good opportunity for the council to reflect on the October 6th decision to discriminate against the less than fully vaccinated individuals and rethink it. It was on October 12th that the Board of Supervisors did their similar meeting, and Health Officer Hoffman at the time stated that COVID cases can be elevated amongst the vaccinated. And then also that it is unknown how long a fully vaccinated person is contagious, when they have COVID. And also that policy dictates extremely more restrictive quarantines for unvaccinated individuals. And then at the same time saying that the CDC does not recommend surveillance of fully vaccinated individuals. So if they're not recommending surveillance, how would they know the difference between the two, really, if they're not paying attention to that? By this time, the city has already made its mind up, it has policy in place. Much of the sentiment of the council meeting when this was decided was that the state of California would soon follow with the universal vax mandate, and then also at the national level. This just didn't happen. They ruled it down at the Supreme Court. They decided it's not really an American thing to do. Some of the council members, while deliberating this issue on October 6th, stated that religious and medical exemptions would somehow add balance to the planned discrimination. Did the city even grant a single exemption? I submitted a records request, which was denied, based on grounds of privacy, but I wasn't asking for anyone's names, just numbers. Was there a single exemption? Now, in contrast to the Juneteenth, the city's Jab for Job discrimination prevents 25% of Black or African American individuals in Humboldt County from working for the city, and also about 50% of Native Americans. They just don't have the job, so they can't work here. I guess that's all right. The head of the New York chapter of Black Lives Matter has come out a few months ago with resounding opposition to vaccine mandates. So does the city not support BLM? On KNS radio, I repeatedly hear that Eureka is the cultural and economic hub of Humboldt County. Well, right now, the cultural and economic hub of Humboldt County is a disgrace. Is this what Humboldt County really stands for? I know that much of the country has been brainwashed by corrupt media and bureaucratic pharmaceutical partnership, CDC Big Pharma. It's time to wake up. We're given bad info, and it's getting worse by the day. So thank you.
Good evening. I just wanted to hearty amen to what Claudette and John came up here and prayed for you. I'm a Christian. I was born and raised here, been here all my life, raised children here. I just wanted to put another focus on Christianity. You heard the man before me talk about religion. I'm also Native American, but I've contributed to this county and to this city, and I commend you and your work that's in front of you. Just want to focus on one little thing. John mentioned something from the Epistle of Romans. The book of Acts, that same man who wrote that epistle said this: Christians are to be a citizen. They're to administer civil affairs and manage the state of affairs, in your case, the city of Eureka. They're also to make or create good citizens so that good citizens behave properly. And they're to avail oneself to recognize the laws. You guys are the governors of those laws, as well as the chief of police and the law enforcement. By the way, I was a police chaplain, served the city for several years under Arnie Millsap. But the last one is the one that I thought was quite interesting. Christians, not religious people, Christians, simple people, hard workers, they're to conduct oneself as pledged to do the law of life. And I know it's hard for you guys. You guys get battered with political commentary and biases. And you have personal biases. But I just wanted to remind you one thing. You sit in those chairs, you're not supposed to be biased. You're supposed to represent all of the citizenry of Eureka. And I would just encourage you to think about that as Christians have their needs as well. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Probably starting to sound like a broken record, all of us harping on the same thing, but I'm old enough to remember vinyl records, and I know when I had one that skipped, I would fix it. I wouldn't just put a banner over it and call it good. I recently rented out my spare room to a nice couple from Arizona, and he came into me this morning and told me that there is a used syringe laying in the driveway next to his van, right where his girlfriend would have stepped had she been getting into or out of the van. So I went out there and I disposed of it. That's the sixth one I've found in my driveway this year, not counting the ones I find outside my back gate, in the alley behind my fence, in my yard that have been thrown over the fence from people getting high back there and then just throwing their syringes over the fence. And I even found one in my fountain in the front yard a couple weeks ago. Those needles didn't come from Walgreens. They came from Hatcher. They came from you. All right? It's not a good look for Eureka. I was highly embarrassed. Here's this nice couple from Arizona. You know, they like the town. They think the place is beautiful. But he steps out of the van almost onto a syringe. And I had to apologize to him for this being Orange Cap City. And it needs to end. It's not, that program is doing no good whatsoever. I don't even know how minuscule the number must be of people who were saved from getting Hep C or HIV because of that damn syringe program. But it's doing way more harm than good. It is not a good look, and it needs to end. Beyond that, I've mentioned before that my wife has been getting worse and worse for 7 months since taking the vax shot. I put my hand on her leg last night and I thought it was her arm. She hasn't been out of bed but twice in 2 days. She's been in and out of 2 hospitals, surgeries, treatments, and she's continuing to deteriorate because she was coerced into taking one vax shot against her will for no reason whatsoever. You guys need to step up and rescind the vax mandate. There's absolutely no reason for it, especially now. I mean, whatever COVID there was is over. There's absolutely no reason to be continuing this. You guys need to make a stand on 2 things, the needle giveaway and the vax mandate. You're doing far more harm than good.
Do we have any? Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
We have somebody inside first, and then we'll let somebody on Zoom talk after this.
Hi, I'm here tonight to express again my disappointment in the council and mayor. Over the past 5 years, I've been contributing to public comment. I have seen virtually little action from our representatives to improve the complaints and suggestions to them. Quite frankly, I don't understand why you ran for this office. When you were elected, you should represent your voters and try to make our city better. Since your election to office, the city looks like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, and Portland. I've come to believe, like many of your commenters, that you're doing it on purpose. Eureka has such a bad name for itself that a professional video has been made of it entitled Orange Cap City. Eureka is overrun with crime and homeless in our business districts and residential areas. You have allowed the homeless to be bussed into our area. Why haven't you found them a shelter so that they do not have to occupy the businesses and vandalize them? Other neighboring cities have acted on the homeless problem, but not Eureka. Your business districts are dying. All you have to do is drive your car around downtown and Old Town to see the shuttered businesses. Most of them were hit hard with the pandemic and are barely surviving. There was a small grant of $5,000 to qualifying businesses over the past year. This is barely enough to pay 1 month's rent, utilities, and expenses. You have an absolutely great grant writer. Why don't you want to help our business community? A vibrant business community brings in tourists and revenue to this city. It doesn't make sense to me why you refuse to help them, other than you just don't care or you're doing it on purpose. I have a perfect example. A tenant of mine wanted to remodel a space in my building. This included painting, upgraded appliances, flooring, and another half bath. It wasn't even a refurbishment. Do you know how long it has taken the city to approve this updating? 19 months. Do you know how much money this owner loses while the city slow walks these improvements? You should be going out of your way to help anyone that wants to improve the business district and the curb appeal of Eureka. Instead, they are met with demands for money at every turn. You have charged for everything and anything in addition to her money she expends for her improvements. Can you tell me why? Why would anyone want to improve anything with these outrageous charges by the city of Eureka? Thank you.
Thank you. Was that everybody inside so we can move on to Zoom, please?
Mayor, we have Latanya Jacob. with her hand raised online.
Thank you, Latanya. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for allowing me to participate in the City of Eureka Common Council meetings. I'm not sure if I'm about to be homeless, but I just wanted to let you know that I thank you for allowing me to stay at the Flamingo Motel, room 3. I appreciate having shelter, and I will submit my further comments to the council in an email. And it's important that you know where I live in case anyone really needs to know how things are going for me since I got here in 2019. And here I am still today. Thank you. And I will submit my comments, written comments, preferably before the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, our next speaker is Michael Hansen. Please go ahead.
Thank you, members of the City Council and Honorable Mayor Seaman. First, thank you so much for your service and for your patience during this public comment process. My name is Michael. I've lived and worked in Eureka for over a decade, most of that time in the Old Town area. Like many residents, I was shocked and infuriated by the surprise deployment of surveillance cameras that can passively record all audio and video in our most popular public areas.
I'm so sorry. This is an agendized item. So could you wait till the agendized item to make the comment on it?
I apologize.
Oh, no, I'm sorry that you have to wait, but that's just the way the process goes. But we're very...
Stay on Zoom?
Yeah, stay on Zoom, and we will get to you as soon as we can. It's going to be pretty quick. Thanks. Do we have anybody else?
Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to speak during public comment for items that are not on the agenda? I'm seeing no one.
All right, I will go ahead and close public comment, and we will move on to the public hearings. I will say now that we're going to pull item E2 for a public hearing, and we're going to continue that until July 5th. So we'll go to E1 and go to the annual rate review of service rate adjustment for solid waste collection. And I believe there she is, Robin Pratzker.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody, Mayor and council members. Tonight is the periodic rate review for solid waste collection within the city per the franchise agreement that the city holds with Recology. And the agenda item was mistakenly labeled as an annual rate review. It is a periodic. And just as a quick review of the difference between an annual rate review and a periodic rate review, per the terms of our franchise agreement, certain costs are shored up annually, like disposal and insurance, and this is referred to as an annual rate review. A periodic rate review happens every 3 years, which is this year, and during a shore up, the actual costs associated with performing all of these existing programs, such as labor, fuel, leases, administrative costs, are all shored up against the costs that were projected in the 2 previous annual rate reviews. So for tonight, we are looking at our new rates, and we have concluded that they are in line with other local rates. We are comparable with the county, McKinleyville, and Arcata's service rates. Per the city's franchise agreement with Recology Humboldt County, they provide the application by April of each year. Recology actually submitted this year's review in March, a preliminary review in March. And for the upcoming 22-23 fiscal year, staff is recommending a 2.51% rate increase from the rates that were approved by this council in July of last year, 2021. The first factor that contributes to this rate increase is cost of living. This includes operational costs such as labor and fuel, and pass-through adjustments such as insurance and property tax. Secondly, the Humboldt Waste Management Authority, HWMA, increased their disposal fee by 5% effective July 1st, 2022. And lastly, it should be noticed there has been a little bit of a cost saving through improved commodity pricing and Recology recovering CRV recycling processing fees, which resulted in an 11% reduction in the recycling processing fee, and that has been applied to this rate review. The associated costs related to this year's rate review have been analyzed by city staff and found to be justified. So the results for the rate adjustment are as follows. For a typical commercial customer with a 1-yard bin, it's an increase of $4.98 per month for a total rate of $203.93. For the typical residential customer with a 30-gallon tote, it's an increase of 82 cents per month for a total rate of $33.58. And for green waste customers with a 96-gallon tote, there's an increase of 7 cents per month with a total rate of $6.61. With that, staff recommends that council adopt the attached resolution and approve the 2.51% rate increase for solid waste collection services for fiscal year 2022 through 23. City staff are available for questions, as well as General Manager of our Recology Branch, Linda Wise.
Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions on council? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and open up this public hearing. Do we have anybody here to speak on this item in particular? Do we have anybody on Zoom? It doesn't look like it.
I do not have anyone on Zoom.
All right, then I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back for a motion or discussion. Anybody? Councilmember Castellano.
I will make a motion to adopt a resolution of the City Council approving a 2.51% increase in the rates for solid waste collection by Recology, Humboldt County, effective July 1st, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on it? All right, everybody vote. All right.
Unanimous, or 4 yes votes. Councilmember Moulton absent. Motion carries.
All right, thank you so much for your work on that. We're going to move on to our next item now, which is the consent calendar. I have not heard of anything, but does anybody on council want anything pulled? All right. If not, can I have a motion?
I'll move the approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All right. Everybody vote.
Four yes votes. Councilmember Moulton absent. Motion carries.
Next, we're moving on to legislative action correspondence. And did anybody have anything they need to bring up here? I do believe City Manager Slattery had a brief update on our last legislative action correspondence.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. At the last legislative agenda item, Council requested that a letter be submitted to the Surface Transportation Board in relation to the rail banking of the railroad from Sonoma up to Samoa. And that was submitted, and if it wasn't for us, it would have never happened, but we got our way. So they did deny the submittal from the companies wanting to bring rail back, and they allowed for rail banking to occur. So it worked out well.
Thank you for getting that done. We are going to move on now to reports and action items, and this is the security camera use policy, item I-1. And City Attorney Luna has a brief introduction to that.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item, I do not have a lengthy presentation on this item, but I do hope that it is both short enough to be user-friendly and also substantive enough to be meaningful. And because of the public interest in this item, I think I will cede any time for explanation to questions from the council and comments from the public.
Councilmember Arroyo, then Councilmember Bauer.
So in the item about third-party data sharing, I understand the provisions made here. I guess I'm wondering if there's the possibility of just making the footage publicly available, thereby letting everybody in the community know what we're viewing. And, you know, I've heard some requests for that, that we just have like a gazebo cam or something in our downtown area that just is streaming all the time. And I know that other communities do that. So I was wondering what your thoughts are.
I have given this some consideration, and I think that it's not my recommendation to have the city do that at this time. I think if the city were to do that, it would bring up some additional questions that I would like to answer before we even consider that. I think that this policy is very much geared towards those things that are necessary for the city right now, the benefits to the city uses, not public uses, the breadth of which, almost boggle the mind. So it isn't my recommendation that the city just go ahead and make this public all the time. And I want to just, make a point here that this isn't a surveillance camera that we have somebody surveilling 24 hours a day. The city will probably go in and look when something happens or if something happens, right? But not have somebody sitting and watching all of the time. And I think there's a significant difference there, a difference that has been discussed in case law around surveillance, and that I think would come into play in any analysis that I would make if the city wanted to make this public.
And to be clear, I was talking about perhaps one of the devices, not every one, I suppose. But
I don't think my analysis changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Bauer.
I just had a question on item. Well, it's E, and then two little I's, and it says to assist in ID, apprehending, and prosecuting offenders. And offenders seems kind of vague to me. I don't know if it, what is an offense? Offense of bad taste or of law, of certain laws. I don't know if there's something that we want to, offenders of public law or something. I don't know. It just seemed to me so vague that it can be interpreted a million different ways. That makes sense?
It does. I don't want to argue with you, Councilmember Bauer, but I would say that the prosecuting qualifier would suggest criminal offenders, not offenders of good taste.
Okay.
However, if you have a word you want to propose instead, I'm happy to entertain those.
No, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to pretend to be. I just was wondering if there was something more specific that would be appropriate or an additional word. But
yeah,
I'm fine with it for the most part.
I mean, I certainly understand. I think that the policy taken as a whole is very clear that this is not for surveillance outside of narrow confines that really do promote, benefits for the city. And so, prosecuting offenders read in that context, I think makes a lot of sense and is enforceable in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Castellano, did I see your hand up earlier?
Great. Thanks so much for bringing this before council. A few questions. I'm really glad it's coming forward so there can be public input on this policy. If something were to change at an administrative level, would this come back before council? Is that kind of within the policy?
I think that's true of any policy that comes to the council. If we needed it to change for any reason, if the council wanted it to change, but that needed to be listen to, and we would certainly be able to and would change the policy to fit those needs and would bring it back to council at that time.
I guess what I'm asking is, and just I have some hesitation around surveillance or just caution, right? I feel cautious about it. It's just that would it be important to put in the policy that it would need to be, that changes would need to be brought before council if there were changes to be made to the policy? Like could it be changed without coming before council, I guess is what I'm asking.
So I think that the way that the policy is written, again, I wrote it to be very clear that there is a policy that we use for narrow purposes. And while my opinion usually doesn't matter, I will say that I also have, I think healthy concerns, which is, I hope comes through in the policy. And if we were going to expand use, which I think is what you're getting at, we would certainly come back to the council in order to expand use. So, I read this as a healthy, restrictive policy on use. Any expansion of that use would come back to council.
Super. And then at one of the Eureka Main Street meetings, one of the biggest concerns that businesses had was the visual nature of the cameras. And I'm curious, I could see, that's not currently in the policy. This is more sort of, governing the use. Would it be appropriate to consider, something like the visual nature of it within this policy?
So that was something that was discussed among staff, as everything is at the city. We did, mull over what goes into this policy and what doesn't go into this policy quite a bit. And I don't think that this is quite the right place for an aesthetic-based policy, if you will. I will say, however, though, that staff reads you and the community loud and clear when it comes to the aesthetic aspect of it. So, that will be considered, whether or not it can be written into the policy in a way that can be meaningfully enforced. I don't think so. And so I think writing that aesthetic piece in weakens the policy, actually, in a way that I don't recommend.
And then one last question, sorry. And that is, I was reading some stuff around like the, constitutional rights and surveillance and cameras and things. And one of the things that was recommended was that individuals can be tracked or identified, I'm just reading it from this page, by a public video surveillance system only pursuant to a warrant. Law enforcement must obtain a warrant prior to using a public video surveillance system to track or identify. Law enforcement must obtain a warrant prior to using a watch list. Is that something that we have police code about or would be included within this policy? Or
no, I think that has been over many years clearly defined by case law, and it was something that I quite in depth before drafting this policy. And the mere use of security cameras is certainly not against the law. The city does not need a warrant to use these security cameras in this way. So, that was certainly on my mind and is settled law, and I think we're in good shape here. Yeah.
All right, Councilmember Arroyo.
I have two. One is I think for you, and one is I think for our chief or captain. But the first one, at the recommendation of a community member, I looked through the City of Oakland's pretty extensive ordinance about this. Because it was very robust and gave me a lot of food for thought. One of the things that I found interesting was that there's a fairly robust definition of what surveillance cameras are and what they're not. And I found that ours didn't have any definitions. So I was wondering if you feel that it is clear as is, or should we include definitions? I mean, there's a lot about what can't, in my mind, it was obvious. And then I started reading this and I was like, oh, well, these are other sort of devices that can store information are explicitly exempted. And so I don't know if there's any utility in just defining what surveillance technology or surveillance cameras are specifically. Do you have thoughts on that?
I also read the Oakland's ordinance. And I do think there's utility in definitions. And I think that in Eureka we know what we're talking about now, but I'm not opposed to adding a definition here. So we have a couple of options, and I'll kind of look to city manager and city clerk too. You can approve with the direction to add a definition, or I can bring this back next time. And that would be obviously with the concurrence of the rest of the board.
And that would be small enough to be able to approve it with. Oh, it's not an ordinance; it's just a policy. So,
I think we could come back to that hopefully after we hear
have
comment. After I ask 2 more questions. I looked at this section about using unapproved technology or something that's outside the bounds of a security camera or whatever during a large scale event or exigent circumstances. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on adding a clause that broadens this in case of information sharing needs in an emergency, essentially.
You mean with third parties?
Mm-hmm.
Is that the question you had for the chief or the captain? You said one of them was.
I actually had 2 more questions. So I lied. I'm sorry.
I mean, I think that's probably captured in other existing law. So exigent circumstances stands alone as an area of, well thought out law. So I don't think we need to add it here. Maybe going outside of this a little bit, the conversation around data sharing, I think is a bigger one that, we could have at a different time. And now that I'm thinking about it, because I did read ordinances with the definitions, I think I changed the name of this to security camera specifically, because that has a specific definition, or at least a clearly understood definition, whereas other cities that were developing, ordinances and committees and lots of other scaffolding around that use had a lot of other things at play. And so, the city has very few devices, and I think that's why I kept this as short as I did and cut out a definitions portion that could have grown to unruly lengths.
Okay. Yeah. I think that makes sense, because the other ones were like surveillance technology,
yes,
or more broad terms than security camera.
That's yes. I'm sorry. I'm now I wrote this a while ago, and I'm now remembering that is the decision that I made.
Okay.
To narrow it for that purpose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you don't think we need to add something about exigent circumstances and sharing data? Okay. And then I was going to just ask if you wanted to comment on the way that you anticipate using this, but I do think the ordinance makes it fairly clear. But are there any additional things you feel like you need to say about it, EPD? I anticipate you're the primary user of this information, so.
Hi, good evening. Todd Jarvis, interim police chief. Primarily, I see this, and historically it is used after an act has occurred. And as the city attorney said, we're not monitoring this 24/7, so we can go back, look at footage, and then track down suspects, hopefully, and even determine if crimes have occurred or not. And oftentimes, these types of cameras are just as valuable to clear somebody from a crime as they are to find somebody and gain that prosecution and conviction. So it's a great tool for law enforcement. But there's a lot of uses. You know, during any type of event, we can look at all kinds of things. We can look at crowd sizes. We can look at parking, and we can look at traffic matters, and we can look at the condition of city property. So there's a lot of things we can use it for, but our goal primarily is to be able to identify crime, identify suspects who've committed crimes, and to track them down.
And when people give you their private security camera footage, when there's been an incident and they want to remit that to you, this policy doesn't seem to cover that. This is about city-owned or city-operated devices. But is there already, a policy in place within EPD to handle that evidence, essentially? I mean, I assume there is, but I don't know what it is.
And we also plan on creating a more robust policy within EPD to utilize this system as well. And it's important for people to understand that these are going to be used for the purposes stated here, and we're going to make it clear that there's no room for abuses. And because these cameras have the ability to tilt, pan, and zoom, we want to make sure that any use of them is authorized. There'll be a limited amount of people who have access to this, and also that it's for official purposes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question for you. I think a lot of us are, don't like the idea of surveillance, like Councilmember Castellano was saying. But I think it's important to understand this is really about deterrence, right? I mean, the cameras that we have, the mobile ones that have been moved around the city, can you give us any kind of data as to has that reduced crime in those areas, reduced vehicle break-ins? I think they have.
It has. I'm going to let the captain talk to that because he's had a lot of experience with that. But yes, we are looking at this as a deterrent, and we're looking at this as a tool to then, if a crime has occurred, to identify suspects. But yeah, let the captain talk about police one.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, the mobile trailer that we originally purchased and we're using at multiple sites around the city. Primarily, we were using those on private property in the beginning due to requests from business owners given an increase in criminal activity they were having on their property. It's hard to quantify over short periods of time what kind of effect that had, but obviously there was no crimes committed in those particular private parking lots when we put the camera at that location. So as a deterrent, I do feel it had very positive impacts on our community and on those businesses. We've utilized the trailer at one of the locations where there is a camera now at the foot of Truesdale. This location has significant issues with overnight camping, trash, and is a lot of work for city employees to clean up every morning right off the Hickshari Trail. Upon putting the trailer at that location, we saw an immediate change in the behavior with the overnight camping, with the garbage that was left behind, with abandoned vehicles that we were having to deal with in that private and the city lot down there, and got a lot of positive feedback from those that are utilizing the trail and utilize that bathroom and rest area there. So overall, the impacts of the trailer, both on city property and private property, has been positive in those areas we've used it, and the feedback we have gotten from it and the appreciation we've gotten from the business owners has been very positive. Okay.
All right. Any more council questions? Then I will open it up to public comment. And Mr. Hansen, who's been waiting so patiently, but hopefully got a lot of good information when he was listening.
Hello,
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for your time again. Take two. My name is Michael, and as I said, I've lived in Eureka and worked in Eureka for over a decade, mostly in the Old Town area. And like many residents, I was shocked and infuriated by that surprise deployment of the surveillance cameras that are capable of passively recording all audio and video in the most popular public areas, allowing the city and law enforcement to potentially monitor not only the desperate homeless people in need in our county, but also activists, artists, workers, students, tourists, none of whom would want to be recorded without their explicit permission. The purchase of these cameras was a poor decision from the start. Rather than act as a deterrent to crime, ongoing monitoring of the general public mostly decreases public trust in the city and law enforcement. And the last thing the public needs right now is any reason to further erode its trust in our institutions. And yet the city manager, public works, community services, and the police department decided that they had the right to monitor us without our knowledge, permission, or participation, or the knowledge of the rest of the city government, including you. The taxpayers of Eureka did not ask for this continuous surveillance, and as you should know by now from our local media coverage, aesthetics aside, the vast majority of our thriving Old Town business workers and owners, including myself, did not ask for this and still do not want it. I can only imagine how the company that makes this equipment convinced these members of government they were doing the right thing when they ultimately shattered public trust. I ask who in the entire decision-making process up to now advocated for the public's right to be free from government intrusion? Who advocated for the homeless people, most of them who are not addicts or criminals who would be the most surveilled? How much research was conducted into whether our many tourists who drive the economic engine of Old Town in the city would appreciate or fear being monitored by the government? It's this attitude among certain members of government and law enforcement that they and nobody else should decide what's best for the public that ensures that the public does not feel that government works for them. Supposedly deterring potential crime at the expense of deterring actual tourism dollars seems foolish at best to me. If law enforcement wants to investigate the crime using surveillance, it can get a warrant. It shouldn't have the ability to passively track movements of innocent civilians. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. The idea that the cameras deter crime is not only false, but the fact is that the city already has cameras that were placed without public input. How can something be a deterrent if no one's aware of it? If deterrence was the real reason for the cameras, the city would have been aware of their usage and would have welcomed the public's input and participation in this whole process, and that did not happen. A far wiser investment of public funds would have gone towards actually investing in solutions and solving our homeless problem here. As far as the written policy draft, it looks to me like a decent outline, but that's it, as I've seen more comprehensive planning from high school student government. The taxpayers of Eureka should expect communication of a far more robust set of protections to guarantee there's zero chance of misuse of any surveillance footage, and to spell out in detail which collected data will actually be preserved beyond the proposed 90-day window, because as written, all of it can be theoretically preserved as city business.
Thank you very much. That's your 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Caroline Griffith.
Good evening, Caroline Griffith, resident of Eureka. Much like the previous speaker, I was also pretty shocked to see this happen and to hear that the city was erecting these surveillance poles. One reason is there's a lack of evidence that surveillance of public places actually reduces crime. There has a study by Cornell University found that although cameras reduced crime by 51% in parking lots and only by 23% in public transportation, that in other settings, there was a very small to no decrease in crime. One thing that has been documented, though, is institutional abuse of surveillance footage. Police throughout the country have misused surveillance in ways such as using it to surveil gay clubs and target people for blackmail who are patrons of them. They have also used it to stalk people and to target and repress activists. And it's also been documented to be misused to discriminatorily target people, mostly people of color. The one fear that I have locally is that it will be used to discriminatorily target houseless people. I think that the city should, personally, I would love to see us have a policy against surveilling public places, though that seems, we're already a very surveilled country and many of us carry surveillance devices in our pockets. But it seems really that the city should have a very strong policy to make sure that this is not misused. And one thing that I don't see in this is anything that addresses how it will be decided when and if surveillance is warranted in any particular place. One of the goals in the staff report is transportation safety, which I'm all for, but I'm curious if these cameras will be placed in areas in which there have been reports of traffic safety issues, because that could be very useful to document when folks, pedestrians or cyclists, have interactions with cars and to really get a true picture of what happened. But one of the things is that once these cameras are in place, it'll be really easy for the city to expand the use of them and increase the spaces that they're surveilled in. So it would be really smart to have very clear guidelines about when and where they're used. And secondly, the Section 3 data collection states that the city's security cameras will be used to collect video footage and images. The city's security cameras will never be used to collect audio data from members of the public. The city's security cameras do not have facial recognition or license plate reading capability. And I would suggest that this should be changed to will not, to prevent that from happening in the future. And it seems like this is a policy that will affect a lot of people. So I would suggest taking some time to craft it and do it right, and don't rush to approve something tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment on this item?
Hello. Yeah, I know it's kind of a mixed thing, wanting to, document, possible crimes and, protect people's civil liberties and whatnot. Kind of makes me think of a friend who had an idea for a shirt is "Don't Frisco my Humboldt." And do we really want to grow this city into something it's not, before it gets there? Yeah, and I just, you look at the way things are in China and stuff with, social credit scores and just all the surveillance that those poor people have to put up with that. It's just I don't know if we want to get there. And I'm just thinking of the California wiretapping laws. It's like any public instance that someone would expect to be private. If you're just not in this instance, but if you're just another person recording them, it's illegal. If there's someone assumes that it's a private conversation or, they're conducting themselves privately, walking down the street, then it's an overstep of what a normal citizen can do. So I just think we should, reconsider it and just not let it be a gateway camera that leads to more cameras, on every little pole, looking at us from every little angle, turning us into a bigger city than, we are quicker than we need to get there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
Thank you. I see LaTanya online.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, I do apologize. I think it's necessary for me to say where I live, and as far as the cameras goes, my journey from where I was at the bus stop to the room where I currently live, was that recorded as well?
No.
Okay. Well, I'm very appreciative. Like I said, I'm homeless, and now you can see where it is I live. And I'm very appreciative to have shelter. And I don't want to make this a political or yes, I'm very appreciative from where I live, but not happy. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that. And I will put my comments in writing again in the meeting, in the minutes, and send them to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think I don't see any other public comment. Do you see any other online? All right, then I will close public comment on this item, and I will bring it back for discussion and direction and adoption if you guys find that warranted. So anybody want to start? Councilmember Arroyo.
I'll start with another question. Is there signage associated with any of our cameras currently?
That might be a question for Director Gerving.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. No, other than some of the security cameras at city facilities, those facilities sometimes signed such that people are aware they're being, the footage is being taken. But any of the new installations and some of the other facilities, no, there are no signs to that effect.
So in some places it says surveillance in progress or something like that. Security cameras here.
At City Hall, for instance, there's a sign when you walk in the door that says, I think, security cameras in use.
Okay.
So basically, at our interior locations, the Adorney, the Wharfinger, City Hall, there is signage. It says you're on camera.
Okay. Is that signage meant to deter problematic behavior, or is it just something that came with the camera and so it got put up? I'm just curious what the thinking was behind the signage.
That's a good question. I don't know when it went up or how or who put it there, but it's there. Yeah, both, says the city clerk, the assistant city manager.
Okay. And then, I guess I would assume perhaps that it's for employees to feel that if they, that there's a record of their comings and goings. That wasn't meant to come out the way it did. I would say I've worked at places where there was surveillance footage so that if people were like leaving early in the morning or late at night, they could feel like a semblance of safety walking to their next place. Okay, I think that's all I had about signage. I guess I'm interested in the idea of utilizing signage as a means to provide some more information that there is video surveillance in locations where that's happening. I guess in reviewing, so as I mentioned, a community member recommended reviewing what the city of Oakland has done, which is very robust. There's a much more detailed ordinance. It pertains to surveillance and community safety more broadly, and it includes involvement from I believe it's called the Police Advisory Committee there, and an annual surveillance report that is very robust, which to me sounds like something that our city might not have the capacity to produce, if I'm being really honest, just because of the level of detail involved. But I believe that some of these additional measures are why it was suggested as an example ordinance. And surveillance impact reports are also done. So, I mean, there are other levels of detail that can be provided. I'm sorry, there's a privacy advisory commission. It wasn't the police advisory committee. There's a privacy advisory commission that reviews some of this information when it comes to purchasing new technology, etc. So I had just written down PAC in my notes. So anyway, there are some additional measures that we could take. I honestly am not sure what would be different in the outcome other than an additional measure of public awareness. So I think I want to hear other people's thoughts before weighing in more.
Bergel, then Bauer, then Castellano.
So I'm curious, how long do you keep the footage? I don't know that we've discussed that at all. Is that something that we keep for a year? We keep it for 6 months? We keep it forever?
The policy says that data will be deleted after 90 days unless there is a reason to keep it. I mean, unless it's part of an ongoing investigation and it's evidence now in a case. The anticipation will be that it's deleted on a sort of rolling basis, so we don't have just gobs of footage piling up. And so 90 days was a reasonable time period after which, if we needed footage, we could go and find it, but not long enough that we're now storing tons and tons of data.
And so the only time we would review this material would be if there was a complaint in that 90 days. Is that true? Or are you going to have somebody watching it all? I know you said you weren't going to have somebody watching it all the time, but I'm curious, does it require a report from someone else to look at it? No, Miles?
It could be a lot of things. So as was discussed previously, this could be a traffic accident. This could be a vandalism that happens, and that we know that it happened within a certain period of time, and that we can go back and look at the footage to see what happened. It could be a crime that was reported in the area, or even in an adjacent area that you'd go back and look at it. But we definitely do not have staff to sit and monitor cameras in any way, shape, or form. When we had the mobile ones, they were put in locations where we had lots of calls for service and lots of complaints in those areas. As Captain Stevens relayed to council, they were extremely effective. We used them at the Adorney, we used them at Truesdale, we used them at a couple of private locations where they were extremely effective, more so as a deterrent. But for the purposes of viewing them after the fact, it would be very similar to what Councilmember Arroyo had explained, where we know, I mean, a good example is that we had some crime that was going down in Old Town, and a lot of the boxes were being broken into, and electrical boxes were being shut off, and they were breaking into businesses. They used other security cameras from local businesses to help figure out what happened and to catch the person who was doing that. And so, but it wouldn't just be for that purpose for EPD. It could be used by Public Works and traffic safety. It could be used by community services for maintenance related issues, but only when necessary and there's a reason to do so. But we're not monitoring them.
So if that being the case, then how was it decided, if the business owners and council weren't aware that this was going in Old Town at the gazebo, how was that decided? We heard it in public comment tonight.
So it was decided based, so first of all, the reason why we got the lot cops originally is because of our staffing issues at EPD. We were receiving a high volume of calls in certain areas, and we didn't have the staffing or the patrol staff to go out and monitor these areas. So these lot cops were brought in by the previous chief to look into alternative ways to help with staffing and to provide a deterrent so that we can address some of these issues. So when we went out and utilized these over a 6-month period, they were extremely effective. It reduced the calls for service in those areas, and they're extremely effective. So that's how the decision was made to go and purchase these.
No, that's what I'm asking, is how did one end up in Old Town? I understand why we purchased them, and I understand also that there is benefit. Suggesting there isn't. I'm just curious. We just heard from a couple speakers that Old Town wasn't informed. The businesses are upset about it. Council wasn't informed. So I'm just curious if you could just speak to that.
So we chose that location because of calls for service and issues that we've had in that location. The decision was made at a staff level, as it was previously for the mobile lot cops that we used at other locations. As far as the notification, and I'll take the blame for that. We didn't. We were looking this as more of a solution for some of the staffing levels that we have at EPD. These locations that we're choosing are areas of high call volumes and areas that we needed to be addressed, and that's where that location was decided. As far as a specific location where it was placed, that was just decided by staff at the time. But as far as the general areas and the locations that they were placed, they were based on call volumes and calls for service, as well as staff security issues. I can tell you that the one that's close to the Wharfinger was put there, and the lot cop was put there because we had a lot of concern about the safety of our staff.
I'm just, that still doesn't get at what I'm trying to figure out, but I'm just trying
Could you
to
rephrase the question?
I'm just understand that, I mean, we all got a lot of calls when that went in at the gazebo, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of businesses were not happy, and a lot of businesses were happy. It was both and. It wasn't, everybody was, coming at us with pitchforks. Mm-hmm. But what I'm curious is, how was that area determined? Because, I don't see it. Well, there is staff down there, but how did you decide there? Was it calls for service at the gazebo?
Yes. Calls for service, the issues that we have with the Old Town restrooms, the calls for service in that area,
okay.
The crime in that area. From staff's perspective, yes, we've heard concerns, but the majority of the business community have been appreciative of the security camera going in there.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I wish we could put them where people are dumping illegal trash. That would be an amazing thing.
Councilmember Bauer.
I think council member Brugel asked a lot of the questions I had, in particular about, does the public want this? I understand the calls for service issues. I mean, we're perpetually shorthanded, but I don't know. It feels like the commentary that we've received or the comments, I don't know. I'm a little unsure whether we need a more robust, policy before we, implement something like this. I don't know. So I'm interested again in what others have to say.
Councilmember Castellano, then Councilmember Arroyo.
I definitely agree with other council members' concerns, and I appreciate that Chief Jarvis brought up that there will be a corresponding policy within EPD, and I personally would like to kind of actually see that policy come forward with this, just and maybe just to speak to something that I think is really still present in our community is the whole texting scandal. A lot of, just a lot of trust was eroded. And I think that people see something like this and it's just, people aren't sure how it's going to be used. And again, I know that people want to change that. And I think one way of changing that is to have a policy that guides, that kind of governs just, sort of the protocol around having access to this kind of security camera. And then I do think that city business could be defined within the policy, and I appreciate Caroline Griffith's recommendation to include that the cameras do not and will not have facial recognition or license plate reading capability. That would be my kind of feedback around that. I was also just kind of curious, just personally, I know that this maybe isn't within the policy, but just the cost of each camera, like how much they cost.
Is that a question? Sure. So the upfront costs and Director Gerving will correct me if I'm wrong, but the upfront cost for the poles and everything, which is what we own, was about $19,000. And there is an annual cost of $6,000 a month, $5,000 a month. Sorry, Director Gerving will have to ask that. I believe it was $5,000 a month for all of the 5 stationary and the 1 mobile.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. The upfront cost is about accurate. I think the monthly costs could be in that vicinity, because if I remember right, we were looking at what's the overall cost of this entire suite of cameras as compared to one position, or what kind of bang for our buck are we getting with these installations. But beyond that, I apologize, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head.
I think Assistant City Manager Powell is looking that up, so if we give her a minute to do that, maybe if you have another question while we're waiting. Go ahead, Councilmember Arroyo.
Well, I was making a list of, and came with a few of these, but added to it in the discussion, making a list of recommended changes. I mean, I'm hearing some concern about maybe we're not ready to move forward at all, which I completely respect. And I'm happy to give it more time if we feel that that's the direction we want to go. But I did have a list of suggestions based on other ordinances and some of the comments. So my recommendations would include signs that say you're being surveilled, or, security camera in use, maybe not you're being surveilled. That has a different ring to it, but essentially that's what it means. So thinking about all these annual or these robust reporting requirements, I realize it sort of negates the efficiency of their use if we are pairing them with really extensive reporting. I will say this ordinance language does say that the records are public records unless they're deemed otherwise, unless they're exempt from disclosure, so people can request the information. But I also think perhaps an annual report that just says, here's where we put cameras and then reiterates like the appropriate uses of them that we have in this policy. Like we've put, let's say, because this applies to things that we're not thinking about already. Like we're thinking about the lot cops right now, but down the line we could have a real problem intersection where we have traffic surveillance going on, and the staff will review it to see what. Right now we're thinking about it in the sense of the lot cops and a deterrent from X, Y, and Z, and having publicly available footage of some of our facilities. But I think there are other applications in which we might want to share an annual review of what we did and where and why. So perhaps a brief report that outlines that's publicly available. It's just one idea. I like the idea as well of changing that the do not to will not in that one particular example brought up by the publisher. And then it does say that the image or the security cameras won't be used in areas where there's a reasonable expectation of privacy. I think it might be great to also explicitly say that they will only be used in public areas or public right of way. To me, it's a little more clear that we're talking about a city looking at the public domain. And then lastly, when we talk about, sorry, I'm scanning around here. When we talk about authorized use in 2E, it does say the types of data collected that will be suitable for the following purposes. So I do feel like the city business is defined there, that it's for items I through or 1 through whatever, 6 there, but it doesn't specifically say for traffic safety. So I think it could be helpful to add that, because I could anticipate that in the future we might want to, this says to gather evidence about administrative, civil, blah, blah, blah actions. I think it might be good to be explicit that that could include traffic safety, although that is captured in that definition. And then lastly, I just wanted to comment that we do have the ability to hire more personnel within EPD. So if anyone was listening to this and thinking like, oh, they're just trying to save money and not hire, like we also want to hire. And so it's not an issue of the council not allocating budget or positions to that department. It's an issue of challenges with recruitment and all of that.
I think that's a very good point, because we have hired security guards before to assist us in certain areas. When we looked at this, we didn't consider it any differently. This is less expensive than a security guard. And we have done that in the past and hired security guards for the Old Town area to patrol the Old Town area. We've hired security guards to patrol the Wharfinger. We've hired security guards for a lot of different locations to do similar things to what these cameras are doing.
And we also have other cameras. So we've had cameras for a long time. The lot cops are the thing that was new, but the cameras are not new. Okay. Those are, I don't know if others feel like they have thoughts on those recommendations.
Councilmember Bauer, go ahead.
I would just add to reporting, did this lead to solved crimes? Did reviewing the footage help us solve crimes? Did crime go down? So the public can understand these things work. That's why it's there. I think that's an important reporting requirement that we should include. I also just curious what we think about as far as where future cameras go. Who makes that decision? Because it seems like that was kind of a big deal with this one. Would that be more, deliberated at this body? Is that, we don't want to get into that. But it's just something to think about in the future, whether, we leave it to staff or a future city council or something. I don't know.
Councilmember Castellano.
Let's see, to Councilmember Bauer's question, I think it could be interesting to have included something about, cameras would be determined by placement, determined by calls for service, or traffic incidents or something, along those lines. And then I'm just curious what other council members think about kind of having a corresponding policy for how they're, you know, as Chief Jarvis spoke to, of, you know, how EPD uses them or looks at the data, like.
Councilmember Arroyo.
I would say within our agency, including within EPD, we have a lot of policies that are probably internal to departments. This is one that, you know, I think this whole issue being raised by the lot cop and by the gazebo brought to light that we have been using security cameras for a long time. You know, I think it's sometimes hard for staff to know what council would want to weigh in on. There's a dollar amount. Like if it's under a certain dollar amount, then staff have the authority to make certain decisions. I think because we had already been using the lot cops and already had security cameras in the city, I can frankly see how our staff would think that this was more of the same. But anyway, that brought to light something new. I guess I would say there are probably a lot of policies within EPD that we don't weigh in on. So I'm curious. I think I hear where you're coming from, and I agree with you that it could increase public trust for them to be paired. I guess I just don't want to assume that we will therefore moving forward set all policing policies. And there's a lot of internal policies around department activities that we don't set. So I'm curious what you all think about the role of council doing that.
I'll let the chief come up and speak to it, but I would just offer that one of the options would be other policies is bring it in front of our oversight board and have them provide commentary on it. That oversight board does report to council annually and can provide any feedback as it relates to this policy, but it's definitely something we could take to the oversight board. Chief?
Thanks, Mr. City Manager. There are a lot of policies that are internal. However, our policies are posted on the website and they are available for the public, unless it's a policy that deals with a subject matter that's a matter of safety for the public or officers. It is on the website. So once we get this developed, get it approved through legal and through Lexipol, who maintains our policies, then we will have it posted and it'll be available.
I'd like to chime in here for just a second and say that a lot of the onus for this came from the chief, and the policy was developed with him and with other members of the team, including personnel. And so, I think that this was always intended to kind of guide that process going forward. These are overarching ideas. Security camera footage, and I don't necessarily think that, while of course additional policies will be developed as we continue, down this road, we don't necessarily need to kind of micromanage how personnel is doing things. Like there's got to be some trust for how our personnel is handling these things with this in mind, right? We've now created a framework and working from there. I hope that there wouldn't be misuse, and if there was misuse, we already have in place personnel policies to address misuse. So, additional policy, I'm not saying no to it, but we do have a lot. And as the chief said, it's all online, and we have ways in which to address that already.
Councilmember Royal.
Well, my interest in asking about that additional policy was that, we have in the past, we have asked business owners and private residents to tell us if they have security cameras that they're willing to share footage from. And so I assume that you do get quite a lot of cooperation from people providing privately gathered footage and then submitting that as potential evidence. And I know that there's already standards of handling evidence. So I wasn't sure whether that privately surrendered footage just is like in the big bucket of evidence that you get, and whether this kind of thing even applies, or whether there needs to be a separate policy about security camera use that isn't city owned and operated cameras. So to me, it almost seems like the evidence is like its own separate thing. Once it becomes police evidence, you have your own way of handling it, and we don't really weigh in on the policy for that, right?
I think you worked your way through that one. So,
yeah, sometimes I have to think out loud.
Yes, the evidence portion of it is one thing, and we're very grateful for businesses and citizens who've shared their security footage with us, and that becomes evidence oftentimes. What I'm more concerned of with a policy and a procedure, and how city employees and particularly EPD employees employ these cameras, is that I want to have clear and very clear lanes for them to work in. I want to state very clearly, even though I'm not doing it now, state very clearly what these are to be used for and what they're not to be used for. And I just like to remind everyone that, you know, if you're in a public place, chances are right now you're being videoed. If you walk into a store, you walk into a mall, and what we don't have control over right now is how that's used, right? And what I hope to do with an EPD policy, and a robust one, is to really mandate how our employees use this technology. And it's for the public good, and it's not to follow people around. However, you're probably being followed around if you're in public right now in video. And we literally can go to private businesses now if we have a crime in Old Town, and we can go from block to block to block and get a pretty good idea of where a criminal suspect has traveled. And we've done that. So that's available now. We're not looking to get involved in how they operate their surveillance and security cameras. However, we will have some say in how ours are used.
So that begs the question for me. Thank you for thinking through this with me, because it's not always easy. But why would we have, like what you're describing, more detail about how employees are required to handle or utilize the footage? If there's more detail that's not in this ordinance, then I personally would like it to be in this ordinance, and for that to apply citywide for all departments. Because I think what you're describing is like, okay, well, you see a need for some additional level of detail. I guess I find myself wondering why that wouldn't be in here so that it applies broadly, and why it would, be limited to EPD.
Oftentimes you have policy and procedure. Okay, so policy is more broad, and it covers, as the city attorney has said several times, it covers kind of the big picture, where procedure drills down in and says basically A to Z, here's how you handle this situation, here's what you can do, here's what you won't do, and there's ramifications if you do what you don't do.
I just would add too that there's more than one department using these, and so each department is going to have some specifics, and I think that's not especially, but EPD's specifics may not make sense for public works specifics. So that was one of the reasons for having this. And by the way, I think this is an important point. This isn't an ordinance. This is a policy. A lot of the ordinances that I looked at around the state, including ones from Oakland that have been mentioned, ones where the chief used to work, they are ordinances that create a body that then creates a policy. And in many of those instances, while the ordinance was passed and the body created, the policy isn't forthcoming yet. So after kind of years of effort, still I didn't see a policy. And so we skipped the ordinance portion. And, if that was inappropriate, I'll take some responsibility for that. But I think what we created here was, the outcome of some of those efforts. At least that was my hope.
And as the City Attorney Luna alluded to earlier, the reason why we have these policies is because they are enforceable by all of our personnel rules and regulations. And so the parameters I would put forth in this policy are enforceable, and if they're violated, there will be repercussions. It's very similar to other policies that we have. Getting into the exact of how it's done is more department by department, but these are policies, they're enforceable. We have personnel rules and regulations that cover this and ensure that these policies are followed.
I am just kind of curious because I've heard a lot of really broad discussion on this and not a lot of really static feelings. Everybody feels very, like there's still a lot of questions. So do we feel like we're going to come to a solution tonight, or do we at this? I'm not influencing you either way. I'm just Councilmember Bauer.
Is there a rush? I don't think another discussion with some of the suggestions that have been brought up, I think that would be fine. So I'm not really ready to adopt this policy just from the lengthy discussion we've had. And I don't know. I'm a little torn by it, and I think I would be receptive to talking about it again.
Anybody else have feelings about that?
I mean, I have feelings, which are that we're already using security cameras, and we're also already paying for. Now we're under contract to pay for something that we've been using. So I guess I would like to see us adopt something fairly soon. It doesn't have to be this meeting, but I'd like to have a plan for what we bring back, and then what that means for our existing things that we're paying for and systems that are already in place. I would be curious to hear if there are any additional thoughts from staff or council on the idea of signage and an annual report that summarizes where we're using them and for what purposes. And then I made some specific language changes that I'm not that attached to, but I think those two are more substantive, the signage and I'm not talking about a very, very in-depth annual report. I would picture something fairly brief, but publicly available.
So I know that City Attorney Luna made diligent notes of those bullet points that you put through there, and I think that what staff could do is put those incorporate them into this policy, along with the changing it to will and do not, and some of the other language that's in there, and bring it back at the next council meeting for consideration. If there are any other specifics that council would like, if we can take that into consideration, it would be best to get them all so that we don't have any, and we can incorporate all of it into the policy so that we don't have any substantive changes again after that and have to come back again. So if there's other things that council want added or changed, it would be best if we could do that now so that we can have it all incorporated, and if there's stuff that's removed, then we wouldn't have to come back again.
All right, Councilmember Bauer.
I think there was some discussion about oversight, audit and oversight, like whether that's something we want to. I know this will be a system that's used beyond EPD, but having the oversight board involved in some fashion, I don't know what that would be, but.
So if this is ever used in a case by EPD, then it's likely that this would go in front of the oversight board as a part of, if it results in well, maybe that's not true. I shouldn't say that. I don't know if the oversight board would be appropriate for this. The oversight board is more for the oversight of police practices. And so let's say this resulted in an incident where there was an EPD, responding to a call, and there's something used for this. So there's a possibility that they could see the footage from that. Getting into a whole new board, I don't think we'd have the bandwidth to do that. I do think that providing an annual report, obviously the static locations are going to remain the same, and we will have a mobile unit, both private, city, and traffic incidents, and I think that report could come back. I think the report related to reduction in calls for service, those type of things at these locations could also come along with that as well.
Councilmember Bergel, then Councilmember Castellano.
Well, I'd be happy to discuss it later, but I do want to say I think that the chief made a great point, is that wherever you go, there's surveillance now. I mean, it's not, I mean, whether it's somebody on their cell phone a business videoing you or those types of things. So I support the idea of the cameras. I like the idea of having, the signage I think will be important. And we have seen, I mean, I don't know how many of you or the public go down to Hickshari Trail ever at Truesdale, but there have been significant changes down there since that autocop has been put in, and people feel a lot more safe in that regard. My struggle has been with the gazebo, like right there in the heart of Old Town, but I think on trails and that type of thing, it's been very beneficial. So looking forward to discussing this further and to getting this sussed out so that we can move forward.
Councilmember Castellano.
I do think it could be interesting to have something in the policy related to placement and calls for service and or traffic incidents. And then the lingering question in my mind, because I completely understand an incident happened and you need to go back and look at camera footage and figure something out. What is unclear to me right now is, and it's something Chief Jarvis brought up, is like people could also be watching this live, right? You know, like zooming in, zooming out, you know, like, am I right? That could happen with this.
There is the capability to do that,
Yeah.
yes. But like I said, like the chief said too, if there's a large event and we hear of something, so I could see that being a possibility. I mean, we'd want to put it into the policy, but it's just not practical because that's the reason why we're doing this, is because we don't have staff. And if we had the staff, we'd put them down there to do the job.
Yeah, I guess for me, I would like more clarity on when that might happen and or why. You know, that's sort of like a gap for me. I'm like, oh, that's it kind of opens up a different sort of door into the relationship between the public and the city and things like that.
So just so I'm clear, so I know how to kind of modify and bring this back next time, hopefully, in a form that's comfortable. Councilmember, I put in here that security cameras would never be used for personal or non-city uses. When you're talking about zooming in, zooming out, I'm just wondering, like, worst case scenario, what's your fear there that isn't, or maybe fear is not, what's your concern that isn't covered by, don't use this for personal reasons?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, right, like we have an administration now and we have an EPD now that I feel comfortable with, but, let's say there's a protest against something that people don't believe in or agree with, like, could people be using, and that's like in some of the literature I read, like, could people use that to, zoom in on people related to differences in expression of free speech, or something like, or like how, like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like, to Councilmember Bergel's credit, I feel like, and, and Chief Jarvis's credit, I do feel like cameras are everywhere. And this is our opportunity as a citizenry to engage with this. If we don't do it here, like, where is it gonna, where is that discourse gonna happen? So I just think that it's important to kind of be really thoughtful about it. And that's sort of my lingering question is like, we all read 1984, in high school or whatever, right? And, just those kinds of things of like, how does surveillance and how do security cameras start to determine choices people make in a public space?
Yeah. So I will certainly try to address. I'm serious. I really appreciate the conversation, and I will try to address some of those concerns. personally, not personally, as a lawyer, I try not to put things into policy that are as obvious. Don't use something for an illegal purpose, because that's, if I have to put that in, I start to feel like, there are bigger issues at play. But I do think that I'm hearing you and kind of getting your sense of concern about, other ways in which this might be used. So I will do my very best to craft something there. No promises.
All right. Do you have any further direction for City Attorney Luna? Well, once again, good, robust conversation. It is 8:12. We're so close to the end of the meeting, but I know people really like their breaks. So can we push through? Awesome.
Mayor Seaman, could we, we've had our county clerk and recorder and elections manager waiting for city manager reports. Could we pull that up?
Sure.
briefly?
And then do the voting delegation after? Sure. Yeah, I have been
Thank you.
noticing you guys out there too. So thank you very much. So then we are going to hop ahead to the city manager's report, and don't let me forget to go back to the other thing.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So thanks again, Mayor and Council. So tonight, we have Juan Pablo Cervantes here from the County Elections Office, wanting to provide you guys with an update of where we're at with ranked choice voting and when it's going to happen and how we're going to roll it out. So welcome, Juan.
And Kelly Sanders.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Both are here.
Sorry, Kelly, I didn't see you there.
You can come talk together.
And council, I asked Juan and Kelly to come tonight to kind of give you an update on ranked choice voting. For ranked choice voting in 2020, and we changed the charter, and it was expected to go into place in 2022. And the city and the county have been working diligently on making that happen, but there has been some information and some things that we've run into, and so we wanted to give you an update on what's going on, why, and how, and when that will be coming forward. So thank you for assisting tonight.
Thank
Very
you.
much.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mayor Seaman and members of the council. I'm Kelly Sanders. I'm the county clerk, recorder, and registrar of voters. And as Pam said, we have been working diligently with our vendor to get a ranked choice voting tabulation system certified prior to the November 2022 election. We've run into a few hiccups, and the most recent one is that the Secretary of State's office wants to revise their testing policy on the tabulation system. We just found this out last week, and the tabulation system is on hold right now while the Secretary of State's office revises their testing system. They expect to get back to our vendor sometime in July with an update and possibly a timeline on when this will move forward. And while we are disappointed by this news, I think it gives us a great opportunity for a lot of training on the county side to get prepared for 2024. And Juan and I have also talked about the potential of conducting a mock election where we could invite members of the city council and staff and candidates, political party representatives, and any other stakeholders in the community that would be interested. It would give a great opportunity for the election staff to really know the system inside and out prior to, right now it would be rather rushed to get it certified and do something for November. But I think it would also be a great educational and outreach tool for the city to inform their voters prior to a ranked choice voting election taking place in Humboldt County. So, Juan, did you want to add some things to that?
I kind of see it as good news. I think when it comes to outreach, starting earlier is key. We've seen we've seen some rushing in the past when it comes to deploying new ways of doing things, and I think we're on a timeline right now where we could really engage our different communities. There's a lot of things you don't think about when it comes to doing something like this with elections, language, and how you address linguistic issues, and how you impact communities that are already fairly disenfranchised. And so I think the timeline that we're in now will give us the opportunity to develop and deploy a really robust outreach plan. I think working with the city, we can supply support and really start moving forward with the outreach side as the certification process moves forward. So I'd love to work with Pam in the city in doing that in 2023. I think that would be a key way to move forward.
Thank you. You have something else?
One thing I wanted to add is that when the system is certified, Humboldt County will be the pilot county to implement this. So be the first in the state.
Wow. So, Councilmember Arroyo.
So, was there a timeline for how long the state will take to provide that feedback about the tabulation program?
Our vendor indicated the state would get back to them in July with a potential timeline. So hopefully we'll know sooner than later how long it's going to take them to develop their new testing criteria. And then do you remember the timeline for certification? Is it like 90 days that they have? I believe it's 90 days once it's been submitted for certification that they have for testing.
Okay, so we don't even really have the timeline, but once they do it, they have 90 days. So
they've established the criteria for the new testing, and the vendor resubmits. Then I think the state has 90 days to complete the certification process.
Okay, so I just want to be able to express it clearly when people ask, as I'm sure they will, why we're not using ranked choice voting this November. And I love the idea of the mock election, by the way. And I don't know if you all have the capacity to make like a little mini documentary video or something that follows the process. Like, here's what the ballot will look like. Here's, what happens behind the scenes in the elections office so we can actually tabulate it. And, maybe that could be, it doesn't have to be internal skills. Maybe there's a partner in the community that could help with that.
Councilmember Arroyo, we do have a on-staff videographer that we were going to work with to help get the message out. And just to kind of give you a little bit of a timeline, like 90 days from July is almost near the election time. And so our nomination period is July 18th through August 13th. And it's always the candidates kind of need to know how to establish their candidacy and how they're going to, go forward. And then in September, the first part of September is when the ballots are actually developed. And so we would definitely have to know by then in order to have the correct ballots used. So it was just decided that there was just not enough time in this election year.
I think a video would be a great idea. We'd be very excited to collaborate with the city and helping them develop that kind of thing. The timeline that we're going to be on gives us a lot of room to be able to focus on doing this. 2023 is our off year, if you will. So we don't have two giant elections that we're needing to address at the same time that we're implementing and training for something new. So yeah, I think that'd be incredible. Having a mixed media approach to how we do outreach is something we got to do in government.
I do want to add too that this is a very legitimate reason for not doing it. But you guys have also been very helpful for a long time. So it's not like we've put this off or you waited. I mean, we've been having discussions about this since we voted for it, and you guys have been super engaged. And I really appreciate that, and I want other people to know that too. It's not like it just came up right now. So does anybody have any other questions or comments for Councilmember Arroyo?
I was just thinking about the approach of doing a video that's a little behind the scenes and I think it would be really cool if that is also included non-ranked choice voting ballots, just like what's it look like, what happens behind the scenes, because I hear a lot of misinformation. On one hand, misinformation, which is hard to combat, honestly, in some cases, but also just consternation about not understanding the process of what happens when we're doing all voting by mail. So it just seems like a great opportunity if we would already be making a video to do like, here's what happens with ranked choice, what happens with not ranked choice. So
love the idea. The biggest way that we combat misinformation is by inviting people in, whether that's as poll workers or observers, and having a medium to do that. That's something you can do from home would be great.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Thank you for coming, and thank you for learning about ranked choice voting with us. I'm looking forward to 2023 too, and trying to mock one, letting people get a chance to test it before they have to do it for real too.
Very much.
Thank you. All right. So we're going to go back to item I2, which is the League of California City Delegate. We need to appoint a voting delegate and one alternate for the League of California Cities business meeting that's going to be held in Long Beach on September 7th through 9th. So who is attending, and then who would like to be a voting delegate on that? Councilmember Bauer, I heard you're attending.
Yeah.
Councilmember Castellano, are you attending? Right on. Anybody?
Councilmember Bauer.
And I'll nominate Councilmember Castellano for the alternate.
That sounds like we've got a full slate. Are we okay with that? Does anybody have anything else that, anybody want to arm wrestle for the position? If not, we will go ahead and we don't have an official motion for the whole slate though. So will somebody make a motion for the complete slate?
So moved.
Thank you. Awesome. Everybody vote. Can you vote no? Yes.
Okay.
All right.
For yes votes, Councilmember Moulton absent. Motion carries. Oh, and we do have a member of the public who would like to speak on this. Go ahead, LaTanya.
Hi, I'm sorry. I do want to speak, but can someone please enable the chat? I'm trying to send messages through chat so I don't have to speak all the time. So I just wanted to let you know that I can't chat. It's been disabled somehow.
I'm sorry, LaTanya, we don't capture chat as part of the public record, but you are welcome to send an email.
Thank you.
Is that it for you?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, we are going to go to our council reports. We got a little sun left, so we'll start with Councilmember Burgell. Oh, future agenda items. Did we have anybody that had future agenda items they wanted to discuss? Okay.
Just one thing, and this has been brought up by a couple of bicyclists I know, street striping, and the city's in desperate need. I'm just curious if Director Gerving at a future meeting could talk about when we are plan on just getting them restriped for public safety.
And maybe if that was an agenda item, we can talk about that whole bike plan that you're working on, which we haven't presented yet, right? I don't think we presented the bike plan.
Sorry.
If I can, those will likely be two separate discussions. Okay. The bike plan discussion would be significantly farther out than the striping update. And would it be okay for me to give an update now as opposed to waiting for a separate agenda item about it?
A very brief update.
We plan on change ordering a striping project into an active project right now, and anticipate it being done within the next 6 to 8 weeks-ish. So yeah, using some existing funds to get some work done.
Okay, No more discussion about that Brown Act. Sorry. Now we will leave and move on to our councilmember reports. Councilmember Burgell.
Oh gosh. Well, let's see. I probably have a ton of things I could report. You could check on my Facebook page if you're really interested. I just want to say that we had a great graduation at Eureka High. 5 of the students in my 2 classes graduated, and what a gift that is to be a part of that. Just such a beautiful thing. Today is the solstice, so I'm ducking out. Really grateful to be here, and happy solstice, everybody.
All right, Councilmember Bauer.
No, not much to report. Typical the JPA meeting, Cal Cities. We had a government affairs, labor committee meeting that was more just informational kind of stuff. And I also attended the Eureka High School graduation, which was great to see my oldest move on. And just congratulations to all the graduates that made it through kind of a tough couple of years. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a tough couple of years for graduates this year. Councilmember Arroyo.
I'll just comment on a couple things. Had an interesting meeting with Eureka Main Street and in my Humboldt Transit Authority capacity, talking about the Intermodal Transit Center. Got a little bit of feedback about the transit center itself, and then just broadly feedback about that project. So thank you to staff for helping facilitate that. And they had requested that the Humboldt Transit Authority board attend, but the board decided to send the chair, which was me. So myself and Greg Pratt, the general manager, went. And one of the outcomes of that was a request that there be on-site security, which was already part of the plan, but that was helpful to hear. And then, I anticipate that we'll, should the grant be funded, we'll be talking more about some of the design of the transit center and how it will function and giving the opportunity for business feedback about that. I also, lots and lots of things happened, but I want to note that I'll be going to Redwood Acres on Saturday for the fair tank as a fundraiser for the Eureka High cheer squad. So Miles is going to be dunked on a different day. So you'll have a couple opportunities to dunk city officials. I'll be in the mid-afternoon on Saturday, so if anyone really wants to dunk me in the dunk, to do it. I'm also planning to attend that Cornerstone celebration that the Masons are holding at the Veterans Hall, which we were requested to send a city member. So yeah, looking forward to those things. I'll skip all the other regular stuff.
All right, Councilmember Castellano.
Let's see. I attended an LGBTQ plus Pride art show, an art opening, and a drag show. And I put on a site-specific art festival. I attended the Main Street board meeting that Councilmember Arroyo spoke to, so I won't go into detail there. And I attended the Juneteenth celebration on Sunday. And I just want to say that one day of slavery is too long, and Juneteenth is just an amazing celebration. And yeah, and then I also attended the NORCAN meeting, Northern California Association of Nonprofits, at development of NORCAN in the community. And that's what I did.
Excellent. Hearing you talk about the LGBTQIA, I did want to mention that in our proclamation, we used A as allies. It should be A as asexual, or LGBTQ plus, I believe, is the more common thing that we say now. We were using some old language, so I wanted to let everybody know that that is noted and will be corrected in future years. And with that, I will excuse everybody to go see the last few minutes of sun on the longest day of the year. Talk to you later.